The first time the Duke of Wexford saw me, I was dancing with no one at all. I had not meant to. I had been sent to the alcove behind the orchestra to wait with Lady Ashcombe's shawl and her vinaigrette and her endless complaints. And I had been good. I had been still for the better part of an hour. But the musicians began a waltz I knew. I knew it the way you know a voice through a wall, and my feet forgot to ask permission. Behind the screen of palms, where the candlelight thinned and no one looked, I turned once, then again. My hand rose to an invisible shoulder. I closed my eyes. I did not know that the most powerful man in 3 counties had stopped speaking mid-sentence to watch me do it. I learned that much later. What I knew in the moment was only the music and the cool air off the terrace doors, and the strange, dangerous lightness of being, for 90 seconds, entirely myself. When the waltz ended, I opened my eyes and reached for the shawl as though I had never moved. And a footman was staring, and across the whole length of the Harringtons' ballroom, a man in dark blue was looking at me as though I had set something on fire. I should have curtsied. A woman in my position, a poor relation, a companion paid in cast-off gowns and the privilege of a roof, curtsies to a duke the way she breathes. It is not a choice. It is a reflex bred into the bone. I did not curtsy. I do not know why. Perhaps because he had caught me in the one private thing I owned, and a curtsy would have been an apology for it, and I found I would not apologize. I held his eyes for the length of a heartbeat, and then I looked away first. Not down, away, and carried the shawl back to my aunt. "Clara," Lady Ashcombe's fan struck my wrist. "You were gone an age. Where is my vinaigrette?" "Here, Aunt." "The Duke of Wexford is here tonight. You will not have heard of him. You hear of nothing. 11 years he has refused every dance, every hostess, every mother with a daughter to sell. They say he will not so much as stand up for a quadrille." She snapped the fan shut. "And he is to marry the Garrow girl within the month. A waste. Stop fidgeting, you make my head ache." I made myself a statue. But I felt him still, that attention, like a hand on the back of the neck. When I dared to look, he had turned away to a knot of men by the card-room. The scar through his left eyebrow caught the light, a thin line of silver. He did not look back. 11 years he had not danced. I had danced for 90 seconds, for no one, and he had not looked away once. I told myself it meant nothing. I was very good at telling myself things. The Harringtons' butler found me an hour later. "Miss Whitmore, you are wanted. The Duke of Wexford has asked Lady Harrington to make him known to you." The whole alcove of waiting companions and chaperons went silent. I felt every eye. A duke does not ask to be introduced to a paid companion. It does not happen. It is a sentence with no grammar. Lady Harrington herself escorted me, her smile fixed and bewildered. He stood by the long windows, taller than I had judged, and up close the scar was older than I'd thought, faded nearly to nothing. His eyes were dark, not black, but a brown so deep the pupil drowned in it. And they did not perform pleasure or boredom, or any of the things faces are supposed to perform in a ballroom. They simply rested on me, complete. "Your Grace," said Lady Harrington. "Miss Clara Whitmore. Miss Whitmore, the Duke of Wexford." I curtsied now, because the form demanded it before a hostess. He inclined his head. "Miss Whitmore?" His voice was low and unhurried, a voice that had never once needed to be raised to be obeyed. "You dance?" "No, Your Grace." The words came out steadier than I felt. I was minding a shawl. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, the memory of one. I watched you for the length of a waltz. You danced. Then your Grace watched a woman who believed herself unobserved. It is not the same as dancing. I do not know where the spine came from. Perhaps from 11 years of being the one who watched, never the one watched. If I had known I had an audience, I should have stood quite still. I am sorry to have disappointed. Lady Harrington's fan stopped moving. You did not disappoint, the Duke said. And then to the hostess, with perfect courtesy. Thank you. I shall return Miss Whitmore to her party directly. Which sent Lady Harrington away and left us in a crowded room, briefly and improperly alone. They tell me, I said, because silence frightened me more than he did, that you do not dance. I do not dance. 11 years, I am told. 11 years. He said it the way one names a sentence one is serving. I find I am curious, Miss Whitmore, what music you heard, behind the palms, that I did not. The orchestra played a waltz. You danced something older. I should have lied. Lying was another thing I was good at. Instead, I heard myself say, my mother used to wind a music box. A waltz. She died when I was 13 and I have not heard it since, except in my own head. The orchestra's waltz was close enough. My feet are sentimental. They are the only sentimental thing I have left. For a moment, he did not answer at all. The ballroom roared softly around us, a sea we stood apart from. 13, he said at last. Not pity. Something else. Recognition, perhaps. The way one wounded creature reads the limp of another. I lost the thing I danced for at 21. I have not wound the box since either. He glanced down at me. Forgive me. I do not know why I told you that. I have not told anyone that. And there it was, the first crack, hairline, in a man built like a fortress. I felt it as surely as if a stone had shifted under my hand. Across the room, a young woman in white watched us. Pale, lovely, frightened. Lady Sophia Marsh, I would learn. The Garrow girl, his betrothed. Beside her stood a heavy-shouldered man with a smiling mouth and cold, calculating eyes that moved from the Duke to me and back, adding a sum. The Earl of Garrow. He was already, I think, deciding I was a problem to be solved.
Your betrothed is watching, Your Grace, I said quietly.
Yes, said the Duke, and the warmth went out of his voice like a snuffed candle. She is. Good evening, Miss Whitmore. He bowed and was gone, and I stood holding the strange wreckage of having been, for 4 minutes, a person. I did not expect to see him again. Men like that collide with women like me once, by accident, and the universe corrects itself. The universe did not correct itself. 3 days later, a card came for Lady Ashcombe, an invitation to Wexford House, a small music evening. Miss Whitmore particularly requested to attend her aunt. My aunt was thrilled into a frenzy and could not see, as I could, that the request had a shape to it, that someone had reached into my anonymous life and lifted me out with 2 fingers. Wexford House swallowed sound. The hall was marble and hush. The footmen moved like rumours. While my aunt was carried off into a current of titled women, a grave old butler appeared at my elbow. His Grace wonders, miss, if you would care to see the music room. It was not a question one refused. He led me down a corridor lined with portraits of dark-eyed men who had all, clearly, learned young not to smile, and opened a door. The room beyond was beautiful and dead. A pianoforte stood shrouded. The curtains were drawn against a garden gone to seed. And the Duke of Wexford stood at a cabinet with his back to me. And on the cabinet sat a small music box of rosewood and brass, its lid open, silent. "You wound it," I said. "I have not." He did not turn. "It is not played in 11 years. I find I cannot make my hand do it." He lifted his left hand, and I saw now what the ballroom had hidden. The fingers did not fully close, the knuckles stiff, scarred. The same night took the dancing and the hand both. A carriage, leaving a ball. She did not. He stopped. Honoria. We were to be married in the spring. I had danced with her twice that evening. I have danced with no one since, because the last time I did, a woman died before morning. And I am not a man who believes in accidents twice. That is not how the world works, Your Grace. I came closer than I had any right to. A waltz did not overturn a carriage. You have spent 11 years apologizing to a wheel. He turned then, and his face was terrible and open. You say the cruelest things very gently, Miss Whitmore. My father was a clergyman. I learned to wrap the truth in kindness so it would go down. He died too, 3 years ago. I have been wrapping truths in kindness for strangers ever since, for £30 a year and my keep. I looked at the silent box. May I? He hesitated. Then he stepped aside. I wound it. The mechanism caught, resisted, and then, thin, bright, impossibly tender, the waltz spilled into the dead room. My mother's waltz. Near enough. I had not heard it played, truly played, in 8 years, and I had to press my lips together hard. The Duke stood very still and listened to a sound he had buried, and when it wound down, he said, in a voice scraped raw, "Stay through it again." So I wound it again, and we stood in that shrouded room, a duke and a paid companion, and did not touch, and did not dance. And it was the most dangerous thing I had ever done. I should have understood sooner what I was walking into. I understood it 4 days later, by accident, the way one always learns the things that matter. I had been sent to Wexford House again. My aunt cultivated the connection shamelessly now, to return a book of music the Duke had pressed on me. The butler showed me to wait in a small antechamber off the library, and through the half-open door I heard 2 men's voices, and I knew one of them, and so I did the unforgivable thing. I stood still, and I listened. The settlement signed within the fortnight, Wexford, or I cannot answer for the consequences. The Earl of Garrow, smiling even in speech, I could hear the smile. My daughter is a sweet child. You will be kind to her, and the alliance of our names will quiet a great deal of inconvenient talk. What talk? The Duke's voice, flat. Come, we are men. Garrow has been, let us say, overextended. A bad harvest, a worse cousin, a syndicate in the city who do not love patience. £40,000 does not whisper, Wexford, it shouts, and there are men who would dearly like to hear it shout. But a duke's daughter-in-law's father is not a man one ruins. Your name is a roof. I am asking you to be a roof. A pause. Sophia need never know the price of her own wedding. Neither, I think, need you, if you sign and stop asking questions that have unpleasant answers. I stood in the antechamber with the book of music going damp in my hands and understood the whole architecture at once. The engagement was not an engagement. It was a debt restructured into a girl. Sophia was not his bride. She was Garrow's collateral, and Adrian Hale, who had spent 11 years refusing to dance for fear of causing one more death, was about to be married to settle a stranger's gambling. I did not hear the Duke answer. I did not wait to. I set the book down on a chair, very quietly, and I left. And all the way home in the hired carriage I thought, he does not know what he is. He thinks he is doing a decent thing. He thinks he is being a roof. And under that thought, traitorous and bright, he is not married yet. I told myself I would say nothing. It was not my business. I was a companion. I had no standing to carry tales between an earl and a duke. A word from me could be twisted into 1,000 ugly shapes. And the ugliest of them all was the true one, that I did not want him to marry her. I lasted 6 days. On the 7th, he came himself to Lady Ashcombe's narrow house in a street that had never seen a ducal carriage, and asked for me. And my aunt nearly fainted with the honour, and then, sensing something she could not name, withdrew to the next room and left the door ajar for propriety's sake. He stood in the cramped parlour too large for it, turning his hat in his ruined hand. "You left the music behind," he said. "On a chair in my library. The footman found it. You were in the house." "Yes." "You heard?" "Yes." There was no use in lying. He had read it in my face the moment he entered. "Your Grace, I heard everything, and I have spent a week trying to decide whether silence is loyalty or cowardice, and I have concluded it is only cowardice wearing loyalty's coat." I set down my sewing. My hands wanted to move. I made them still. "You are not being a roof. You are being a deed of sale. The Earl is drowning, and he has tied his daughter to your ankle, so that you will sink with him in respectable silence. And you mean to let him, because you think a man who once cost a woman her life owes the world his own happiness for ever after as the fine." He did not move for a long moment. Then he sat, uninvited, heavily, in my aunt's second-best chair. "And if I do not sign," he said slowly, "Garrow is ruined, and Sophia with him. A girl of 19, blameless, thrown to the same gossips who will say a duke threw her over. I cannot save myself without drowning her instead." "Then do not save yourself." I leaned forward. "Save her. Your Grace, stop looking at me as though I am the one who needs saving. Tell me what you mean to do. You are the most powerful man in 3 counties. You said the words yourself once, that your name is a roof. A roof can shelter more than one person, and it need not be the person a blackmailer chose for you. There are a dozen ways to settle Garrow's debt that do not require you to marry his collateral. You have simply never looked for them, because marrying her was a punishment, and you have wanted to be punished for 11 years. The silence rang. "You," he said at last, "are the most inconvenient woman in England." "I have been told so. It is usually meant unkindly." "I do not mean it unkindly." He stood. He crossed the small room. He stopped close enough that I had to tip my head back, and his ruined hand lifted, almost, toward my face. And the floorboard in the next room creaked. My aunt remembering propriety, and his hand fell. The air went out of the room. We both heard, distinctly, what had not happened. "I should go," he said. "Yes," I said. Neither of us moved for the space of 3 breaths. Then he was gone, and I sat in the wreckage again. And this time, I knew exactly what it was. What I did not know was that Garrow had a longer reach than I had reckoned. The first I learned of it was a paragraph. The Tatler, that filthy little scandal sheet, in the column that ruins women for sport. A blind item, but blind to no one. A certain duke, long admired for his constancy, observed paying marked attention to a companion of no fortune and less name, a young person of the genus adventurous, who is said to have danced alone at a ball to catch the eye. She has since been busy catching. The lady to whom the Duke is promised is, we hear, distraught. By noon, my aunt had read it. By 1 o'clock, she had understood that the person of no name was her own niece, and that the connection she had cultivated was now a stain that would splash onto her. By 2, she had told me, white-lipped, that I would pack my things, that I had ruined us both, that I was exactly the grasping creature my dead father's poverty had always threatened to make of me. "I did nothing," I said. "You danced," she spat, "where a duke could see. You have your mother's loose feet, and you will end as she nearly did. Pack." I packed. There is a particular cold that comes when the small safety you have scraped together is taken back, and I felt it close over me as I folded 3 gowns into a single trunk. Garrow had done this. I knew it as surely as if he had signed the paragraph. He had seen me adding up the Duke's looks at the Harringtons' ball, and he had reached out one idle hand and crushed me, to be sure I could spoil nothing. "A wedding writes no receipts," he had said. "A ruined companion writes none either." I was to be swept out before I could become a witness. And the cruel arithmetic of it was that he was right to fear me, and wrong to think a paragraph would silence me. He had only made me free. A woman with a place to lose is careful. A woman already cast out has nothing left to be careful with. I did not write to the Duke. I did something my whole life had not prepared me for, and which I have never regretted. I took the last of my own small money, and I hired a chair, and I went, uninvited, unchaperoned, ruined already, so what did it matter, to Wexford House. And I asked to see him, and when the grave butler hesitated, I said, "Tell His Grace that Miss Whitmore has come to return something. He will understand." I had nothing to return, but I had the truth, and I had finally understood that the truth was the only thing I had ever truly owned. He came down himself, fast, the paragraph clearly already known to him, his face like a closed door. "You should not be here. This is precisely what he wants. You, at my door, where any eye can—" "I know exactly what he wants," I said. "He wants me gone, and you silent, and that poor girl sold. He has thrown me to the dogs to be certain I cannot stand up in any room and say what I heard in your library. So I have come to say it to you instead, while I still can, where it can do some good. The Garrow betrothal is a fraud, Your Grace. You know it. I know it. And in 4 days you are going to stand up in front of all of London at the Marchwood Ball and put your name to it forever, unless you decide, tonight, to be something other than a roof." He looked at me, ruined, breathless, having spent my last coins to come and shout the truth at a man who could have me removed with a glance, and something in his face broke entirely and reassembled into something I had not seen there before. Resolve. "Stay," he said. "Not," he caught himself. "Not like that. My aunt, the Dowager, keeps rooms here. She is the most respectable dragon in England, and she will sit on your reputation like a hen. You will not be cast into the street to please that man. And in 4 days, Miss Whitmore, I am going to need a witness." He stepped close. "Will you be mine?" "I have been a witness my whole life," I said. "It is the only thing I know how to be." "Yes." The Marchwood Ball was the largest of the season, and Garrow had made certain all of London came to see the Duke of Wexford bind himself to Lady Sophia Marsh. The betrothal was to be announced at midnight, By 11, the ballroom was a furnace of silk and candle smoke, and I stood at its edge, respectably gowned now, the dowager's dragon-grim companion at my side, and watched the Earl of Garrow move through the crowd like a man counting money already in his pocket. At 1:45, the Duke of Wexford asked the orchestra to stop playing. It is a strange thing, a great room falling silent. It happens in rings, outward from the centre, conversation dying in widening circles until the only sound is the hiss of the candles. Adrian Hale stood at the top of the room beside a white-faced Sophia and her smiling father. And when he had the silence entire, he spoke, and his voice did not need to be raised. "You have come to hear an announcement," he said. "I will not disappoint you. But it is not the one the Earl of Garrow has promised you." A stir, 100 indrawn breaths. Garrow's smile did not move, but his eyes found me across the room, and I watched him understand. "Lady Sophia Marsh is a blameless and gracious young woman, and I will not marry her. I will not marry her because our betrothal was never a courtship. It was a transaction, arranged by her father to settle a debt of £40,000 owed to a city syndicate, a debt he intended to bury beneath my name, with his daughter as the mortar." The room detonated into noise. Garrow's voice rose above it, furious. "This is slander. This is the raving of a man bewitched by a fortune hunting. Where is your proof, Wexford? A gentleman's word against what? The hearsay of a ruined companion you have installed in your own house?" And there it was, the trap, sprung neatly, the same trap the paragraph had built. My word was worth nothing. A ruined woman's testimony was a joke. Garrow had spent 4 days making certain that the only witness could be laughed out of the room. But Garrow had made one error. He had assumed I came empty-handed. I stepped forward. Every eye swung to me, the scandal made flesh, and I felt the old terror of being seen rise up, and I let it pass through me and out. From my reticule, I drew a single folded sheet and held it up. "Not hearsay," I said, and my voice carried clear into the silence. His own hand. "The Earl of Garrow wrote to his syndicate 8 days ago, promising them settlement upon the conclusion of the Wexford marriage, and naming the sum, and naming the date. The letter went astray in the posting. A careless footman, a wrong bag, the sort of small accident the great never trouble to imagine. It came into my hands by no design of mine. I have read it. So may any gentleman here who doubts the Duke's word." I looked directly at Garrow, and for the first time in my life I did not soften the truth before I let it go. "You taught me that a paragraph could erase me, my lord. You forgot that paper cuts both ways." Garrow lunged for the letter. 2 gentlemen, scenting blood, stepped between. The letter passed from hand to hand. Marchwood himself read it and went grey, and looked at Garrow as one looks at a corpse not yet aware it has died. The Earl's ruin, which he had spent a year and his daughter trying to bury beneath a duke's roof, stood now naked in the largest ballroom in London, witnessed by everyone whose opinion he had been so desperate to keep. It was Sophia who broke the tableau. She crossed to her father, and her young voice shook but did not stop. "Is it true?" And when he could not answer, she turned from him, turned to the room, lifted her chin, and said, "Then I am very glad not to be married for a debt I never knew I was." And the sympathy of the room, which Garrow had counted as his own currency, flowed all at once to her, and left him bankrupt in every sense at once. The The Duke of Wexford crossed the floor to me through the roaring crowd. He did not stop at the proper distance. He took my hand, both his hands, the whole one and the ruined one around mine. "Miss Whitmore," he said, loud enough for the front ranks to hear, and soft enough that it was only ever mine. "I have refused to dance for 11 years because I believed that wanting something was the same as killing it. You walked into my dead music room and made it play. And you have just walked into the most dangerous room in England and made the truth play. And I find I no longer believe the thing I believed." He drew breath. "I do not dance, but I should like, if you will have me, to spend the rest of my life learning. Will you?" "Here?" I whispered. "In front of all of them?" "Especially in front of all of them." His mouth curved, a true smile now, the first I had seen complete. "I have hidden you behind palms once. I will not do it twice." I should perhaps have said something wise. Instead, I laughed, a real laugh, helpless with tears in it, and said, "Then ask the orchestra to play a waltz, Your Grace. You will find I know the steps." And he did. And before the whole astonished assembly of fashionable London, the Duke of Wexford, who had not danced in 11 years, danced. Badly, with a hand that would not fully close, with his eyes never once leaving my face. And it was the most beautiful thing I have ever been part of, because for the second time in my life, I was dancing. And for the first time, I was not alone, and I did not care in the least who watched. We were married that autumn, quietly, in the country, in a small church that had once had a clergyman like my father in it. I think of that often, that the daughter of a poor parson should end her days as the Duchess of Wexford. But I think more often of smaller things. Of the morning, a year on, when I came down to the music room and found the curtains thrown open at last, the shrouds gone from the pianoforte, the garden beyond it dug and planted and alive. Adrian stood at the cabinet with his back to me, and on it sat the rosewood music box, lid open. He was winding it. His ruined hand could not quite manage the key, and so he had learned to do it with the other, patiently, the way he had learned to do everything since. And the waltz spilled out into a room that was no longer dead, into a house that was no longer keeping vigil. "You wound it," I said from the doorway. "I wind it every morning now." He turned, and the scar through his eyebrow caught the light, and he was smiling before he even saw me, because he had known I would come. I find I cannot make my hand not do it. The Earl of Garrow left England that same winter. The syndicate did not forgive him. His name, the very thing he had tried to shelter beneath Adrian's, was the first thing he lost. He lives now, I am told, in a cheap quarter of Calais, smiling at no one. Sophia married a kind and unremarkable baronet of her own choosing the following spring, and writes to me, and signs her letters "Your friend, who is glad." That morning, in the bright music room, my husband held out his ruined hand to me, the one that would never fully close, the one that had cost him 11 years of standing at the edges of every room. "Madam," said the Duke of Wexford, "I do not dance." And then, as the music box played the last of its small bright waltz, "But I find I am willing to learn, if you will keep teaching me." I crossed the room. I took the hand that did not close and held it as though it were whole, because to me it always had been. And we danced, with no one watching, which was, I had learned, the only way I had ever truly known how.